Hey, everybody. It is February, as we can tell here in New York from the snow. And this is MM DeVoe. I am MM DeVoe. This is Christina Chu. Right there. It's her birthday today. Happy birthday, Christina.
Oh, thank you.
Magical drawing powers. I'm so good. You guys, you are already saying hi. Hi, Victory Joe. Hi, Sarah. Hi, Ryan from Boston. Hey. Oh, New Jersey in the house. We are really, really glad that you came. We have an amazing show for you, as usual, in the very beginning. Victory just wished you happy birthday. It's so cute. Okay, so first of all, I must thank all our amazing sponsors because they are the best people, because they let us do this, and then we can be good for you. So thank you to the DeGroat Foundation, the Poetry Foundation, to NISCA, to the NEA, and to the LMCC. And also, I want to shout out just for the people who, when they were buying their tickets, gave us a donation. Kate, Dominique, Constance, and Sarah, thanks. We love you. Also to our special sponsor for tonight. Oh, look, one of her 2-year-old twins is saying hi, too. Hi, 2-year-old twin. Hi.
Hi.
So I want to just do a shout out to the Martha's Vineyard Institute of Creative Writing. They want you to know about a virtual weekend writers series. It is on between March and April in 2024. Jashunda Sanders, Christopher Citro, Alexander Weinstein, and T. Clark will be featured, and you can apply at mvicw.com. That's this business right here. See, I'll put it up there. See, you can see it. I'm so old school. I don't even put it up digitally. Anyway, but I hope you all apply. They do have fellowships for people of color. They have fellowships for queer writers. They definitely have parent fellowships, so you might want to apply. We do love Martha's Vineyard Institute of Creative Writing. Let's talk about our amazing event that we have coming on. Christina, you're on, birthday girl. Oh, hi, Minnesota.
Hello, everyone out there, and thank you for joining us, especially all those new people from AWP.
AWP!
Great to see you.
Hey, AW people. And also playback people. Hi, playback people.
Hi,
nice
hello. So we are doing a salon this month about inheritance. Our authors pretty much get this theme and they take it however they want, but they choose this the particular theme that resonates with them. And so we have 3 incredible authors this month. I mean, just wait till you see. We have Jocelyn Nicole Johnson. She's the author of My Monticello, a fiction debut that was called A Masterly Feat by the New York Times, and which placed 3rd on Time Magazine's 10 best books of the year. So that's pretty darn incredible. And she's amazing. A really incredible person. So you're in for a treat.
So nice.
We have Jared Harél. He's the author of Let Our Bodies Change the Subject. It's the winner of the 2022 Raz Shumaker Prairie Schooner Book Prize in Poetry. And the collection Go Because I Love You. Everyone, our 3rd reader and our first reader will be Remica Bingham-Risher. She's a native of Phoenix, Arizona. She's a Cave Canem fellow and an Affrilachian poet. Her work has been published in the New York Times, the Writer's Chronicle, Callaloo and Essence. She's the author of Conversation, winner of the Naomi Long Madgett Poetry Award, What We Ask of Flesh, shortlisted for the Hurston Wright Legacy Award, and Starlight and Error, winner of the Diode Editions Book Award, and finalist for the Library of Virginia Book Award. Her next book of poems, Room Swept Home, is forthcoming from Wesleyan University Press in February 2024. That would be this month. So everyone, please welcome our darling Remica Bingham-Risher. Her memoir, Soul Culture, Black Poets, Books and Questions That Grew Me Up, was published by Beacon Press, and she's the Director of Quality Enhancement Plan Initiatives at Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia, where she resides with her husband and children. Everyone, please welcome Remica Bingham-Risher.
Yay!
Hey guys, that is super sweet. We appreciate you guys having us. The book is in fact out. It's a week old today.
Oh, happy
Came
birthday
out
to your
last
book
year.
too.
Right,
Happy
happy
1 week birthday.
1 week, right?
Hey, Victory wants to know, Remica, were you in Norfolk in 2018? You look very familiar to her.
I absolutely was, Victory. We have to talk. Yeah.
And Sarah Everett also says, hi, Remica, claps all around.
Hey, Sarah.
Yeah.
Sarah's a brilliant reader and annotator of books. So I'm happy she's here. So let's jump into some poems. So the theme was inheritance. When Christina reached out, I was like, yeah, that could work because that's all this book is about. I write a lot about family, but this book in particular is a book of poems, historical images, and family images. I have two grandmothers that figure really heavily here. One, my third great grandmother on my father's side, many folks, was interviewed for the WPA slave narratives in 1937. And my maternal grandmother, Mary Knight, after birthing her first child at 18 and suffering with postpartum, and it was an ongoing mystery then, was taken to the Central Asylum for the Lunatic Insane. And those grandmothers, unbeknownst to them, and certainly the rest of us throughout history, were within 1 mile of each other in 1941 in Petersburg. So that was too much for my little poet heart to take. Come on. Right?
Poems exploded everywhere.
Exploding everywhere. So I researched their lives. I spent 7 years doing a lot of historical research, and some of the poems are in their voices. So I'm going to just try to get through 3 short poems. So this is Minnie Folks, who was born enslaved in 1859, but then went on to have her own successful gardening and private business where she sold at the old market in Petersburg. So I imagine how she would feel about the Great Depression when her and her girlfriends were making a way out of no way for their children and themselves. The Great Depression was hard to distinguish when poverty was a way of life. 1931. Colored folks been broke. Depression ain't made it much worse. Breadwinners, whole streets of us, whole parishes, whole neighborhoods, women on the back end of everything running. Hard up, struggling, throwing rent parties, taking in laundry, in the kitchen, making plates or styling hair, make do however we can. The Poles don't want us, last hired at the factory, but we still exquisitely made. Hair turning back under sweat, dust clinging behind knees, and every dollar our own dollar. We gather at the old market on Saturdays with our wares, what's caught, cleaned, and scaled, cures with herbs and tincture, quilt scraps made into soft diamonds, north stars, signs for devotion, covering. Some of us bought freedom here, but now, without having grown wings, we fill the sky. Every house with heat got a woman's hand in it. We, the industry, we, the communion, the engine and offering, the wheels turning. Thank you.
That was beautiful.
I appreciate you. So, I think about like part of my inheritance is just working harder than we need to. And sometimes we got to talk ourselves down from that. But certainly, I think that ethic is something she gave me. And so now I'll flip and read something from Mary Knight's section, who was sent to that asylum. This is a duplex, a form that Jericho Brown has kind of made famous.
I love this. I love this. Oh my God. Thank you.
I'm a form is my thing. I love it. But also this is a repeating poem. And this is after she's released from the asylum. And I imagine this is kind of the way, the mind is still struggling to make it back to normalcy. 2 months and 13 days. Though all her life she believed she stayed for 9 months, long enough to birth another had she the means. I returned home carrying someone else, not in my body, but in my blood. Loss in my body, but in my blood, nothing's changed. I am just like my mother, something strange, sly, and hushed. Why our mother's every doorway, every host. I am every door, give way to every host. When you let things in, they haunt or anchor you. Let children in to haunt or anchor you, and they'll be there forever, long after you've gone. When I dream of forever, there's laughter, song. I do God's work, with or without him. God works with or without me. I return home, burying someone else. That's the poems from Home Swept Home. And I'll hand it over.
That was beautiful. I mean, I think one of the things that I love about this theme, inheritance, I mean, we all take it in different ways, I'm sure, but is that as writers, we literally have our work to hand down, like, to our children, which is, I think, the best gift we could ever give anyone. And our children have that. You guys are amazing. I'm so happy you're here.
It's true.
Sweet.
Remica, thank you so much. And so when you talk a little bit about your grandmothers, and especially the postpartum, did your grandmother, like, did they obviously didn't figure it out, right? Because she was institutionalized, but did she end up coming out of the institution? I mean,
how did you get the info?
Okay, so I mean, long story short, yes, she ended up coming out of the institution. I had to wait 75 years to get the records because of HIPAA laws, of course. So this is why this is my 5th book and not my 1st book, even though I had lots of information, right? But she did come home. She spent that poem that I read. She really did. Her records show me that she spent 2 months there, almost 3 months, and then was on parole for another year from the institution. So had to continue to check in at the institution. Her records clearly show, it looks like there was some kind of blood poisoning with the birth. A doctor never came until she had birthed the baby in her own Huntersville rundown apartment. So there were so many things, of course, that we, think about now with health disparities that led to just a terrible situation. And of course, an incident in her life that did lead to a psychotic break. It was very clear that that's what happened. But no one ever said, oh, you know what? I think there could be medical reasons for this. So this was kind of the way that she dealt with it after she came home, was realizing that was something that had to be compartmentalized. I have a child to raise. She went on to have 7 other children. She lived to 84. I was holding her hand when she passed in 2007. So, I mean, she had a long, wonderful life. And this is kind of an extraordinary incident in the life of, an ordinary woman who continued to be a fighter.
It's beautiful when people are able to do that, to compartmentalize the hurt, the pain, the horrible thing.
Yeah.
Deal with it.
Yeah.
However
you can. Yeah. And it was something she never talked about until a few years before she passed. So this was something she told me when I was grown, when I was an adult, years before. It was never something that we spoke about as a family. So, it took a lot of coaxing to kind of bring this to light and then tell the whole story, bring the joy of survival to light as well.
Yeah. Cool.
Wonderful. I'm going to talk a little more about research in a little bit, because I know that Jocelyn definitely will have a few things to say about this, probably Jared as well. But why don't we have Jared read, and then we will come back to discussion and go with the flow.
Nicole, we see you talking out there. We're excited that you're so excited about her poetry.
Extraordinary. Thank you.
Yeah. She just said, in case you're not reading this, in case you're not on YouTube and seeing her comments, this is
we
thank
can
you.
See it, but we can. I can't comment back to you, but I can.
It's okay. We can talk.
I can't wait to tell Jericho.
She said, "Thank you for sharing the human experience." There you go. All right, let's talk to Jared. Jared, read us.
Jared,
beautiful.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to just quickly introduce him. Jared Harél. Yep. He's the author of Let Our Bodies Change the Subject. It's the winner of the 2022 Raz Shumaker Prairie Schooner Book Prize in Poetry. And Go Because I Love You. He's been awarded the Stanley Kunitz Memorial Prize from the American Poetry Review. We didn't want to skip that. as well as the William Matthews Poetry Prize from Asheville Poetry Review. Haréll's poems have recently appeared in such journals as 32 Poems, Belote Poetry Journal, Electric Literature, Lit Hub, Plowshares, Poem a Day, The Southern Review, and The Sun. He teaches writing, plays drums, and lives in Croton-on-the-Hudson in Westchester, New York with his wife and 2 kids. Everyone, please welcome Jared Harél.
Yay!
Thanks so much, Christina. Thanks so much. And wonderful to be here. Remica, that was beautiful. I'm going to read a couple poems from my new collection, Let Our Bodies Change the Subject, which came out this past fall from University of Nebraska Press. It's a collection that's kind of knee-deep in parenthood. I have 2 kids, an 11-year-old daughter and 8-year-old son, both of whom show up in the collection a lot, to their tremendous delight. We'll see if that continues as they become teenagers. But so far, they're happy. You know, my daughter, the first book I wrote was dedicated to her and her brother. And when she saw that, she was like, I'm famous. And I'm like, well, I don't know if you quite understand the poetry landscape. Famous, yeah. But I'm happy they're happy. But yeah, it's this collection that's knee deep in parenthood and kind of living for joy, but also being kind of haunted by the past and a little bit terrified for the future, and wondering how to raise kids in that world, in a world where things kind of feel like they're sometimes going to hell. And so those themes of fear and protection kind of show up a lot. And I do think about inheritance quite a bit in my work. The dedication for my collection is for my parents and theirs. And so that theme of generational inheritance is certainly one of the themes of the collection. So I'm going to read 2 poems. This first one, both the kids do show up in it, and it has a tiny bit of singing in it, for which I apologize in advance. It's not one of my strengths. It's called All I've Ever Wanted. The almond milk has turned. Flecks of foul snow slink in slow liquid. Not the discovery I had angled for this morning, but as my dad likes to sing like some Jewish Mick Jagger, you can't always get what you want, which is just what I croon to my 2 children, driving them up the wall because, of course, all they want to get what they want. Of gelato, to play Minecraft till their eyeballs pixelate in their skulls. What humbling work to haul kids toward thoughtful, the kind in humankind, like a foreign language on a stubborn tongue. Yet even as a toddler, my son would refuse a lollipop if his sister didn't get one, still plucks an extra sticker to gift her after school. And hell, my daughter can't ride an elevator without making a new friend or some lady's day by praising her earrings, her sweater, or purse. My point about discovery has escaped me by now, though I know the old chorus for thwarted desire. My cereal will be dry, coffee taken black. I will try against hope to be better than myself, which is all I've ever wanted. And everything I need. And this next one thing that becoming a parent did for me is sort of fast-tracked and gave me a new lens through which to see my own parents as these people who were young and kind of winging it and doing their best. So this next one is kind of a 3-generational poem, and it takes place in our local amusement park where I grew up, which is called Adventureland. And was actually the setting for that movie. I think it was called Adventureland.
Yeah, that was
anyways, it's called Behind the Painted Guardrail. My mom and I take my son to Adventureland to ride every conceivable vehicle in identical slow circles. We watch as the fire truck keeps pace with a rocket ship, an old buggy with the Formula One racer. The park is pretty dead, so she lets him stay on. This teenage employee with a bright red visor and a look so vacant it quiets the soul. As a kid, I once proclaimed, "When I get older, I want to work at Adventureland," to which my mother swiftly replied, "When you get older, you want to own Adventureland. Turns out I did neither, but that exchange persists in the annals of family history as a testament to ambition and a healthy entrepreneurial spirit. In truth, my mother knew little about me, but loved both the me I was and wasn't, a devotion so bright I'd vanish in its glow. My son knows only left turns. He spins and keeps spinning in his blue police cruiser before seizing a bulldozer 6 feet away. My mom and I wave from behind the painted guardrail as he sways back and forth, steering and honking like he owns the place. The teenager yawns, flips a rusty switch. I want to tell my mother more than I can say. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Love it.
So, just a quick question: when you involve family matters in your work, do you mention it to them at any point before it gets published, or do you wait till it's published? I mean, I'm just wondering. I mean, do they have a say? I guess is what I mean.
Yeah, it's interesting. My kids certainly know, and my daughter recently asked me. She's like, are you going to start writing? Because she just got braces and she's feeling quite adult and teenagery now. So she's like, are you going to write poems with me as a kind of a cool teenager now? And I'm like, oh yeah, absolutely. They're not going to just be babies, with my parents and other family members. It was interesting because I had my book launch and they showed up, and that was the first time they heard these poems.
Wow.
So sitting there front and center, and that was cool.
Yeah.
They said they were happy. They gave me a hug, but
Absolutely.
No, I mean it is an interesting sort of thing to think about. I try not to think about them reading it when I'm writing it, if that makes any sense. I want to write the poem that needs to be written. Yeah. And then when it's out in the world with everybody else, then of course they can read it.
Yeah. I once asked Helen Schulman this, another author we've had on Parentis, and she said, write like they're dead.
Wow.
Yeah. I thought that was pretty incredible. I still have trouble doing that, but
yeah.
Okay, let's
getting some claps out there from Helene and Sarah, just so you know.
Yay!
Nicole is out there. It's good.
Okay. Our final reader tonight is Jocelyn Nicole Johnson. She's the author of My Monticello, a fiction debut, as I said before, that was called A Masterly Feat by the New York Times. And that's pretty rare. That's really rare. And pretty amazing. And it placed third on Time Magazine's 10 Best Books of the Year. My Monticello won the Library of Virginia Fiction Award, the Weatherford Award, and the Lillian Smith Prize, the Balconies Prize. Is that how yeah? And was finalist for many others, including a National Book Critics Circle Award, a Penn Faulkner Award, and an LA Times Book Award. She's a veteran of the public school art teacher. Johnson lives and writes in Charlottesville, Virginia. Everyone, please welcome Jocelyn.
Yay!
Thank you so much for being here, Jocelyn.
Yeah, thank you all for having me. My mind was going all over the place listening to both poets. I mean, I thought about my grandmother who magically appeared in the novella. The name, I had this grandmother I was writing, and I kept playing with the name, and I ended up, my grandmother was named Ma Pansy, and I slowly came to Ma Violet for this grandmother character, not realizing that I was directly poaching my own grandmother's name. And then for Jared's last poem, I think I'm with the teenager at the end who's too cool for school. Well, I have a 17-year-old, so I've gone through the Minecraft sweetness and do it a different level, which is also lovely, but different for sure. So I'm gonna read. I just wanted to start with the dedication, because I was also kind of echoing what Jared said. So this is My Monticello. I dedicated it for my parents who had me in Virginia and made it home. And the initial idea of this the initial concept was that these stories, there's 5 stories in a novella, would be like pinpricks in a map of Virginia. And it actually was called Virginia Is Not Your Name. That was the working title. So I'm going to read, since I'm reading with poets, I'm just going to read a paragraph from the beginning of one story, and then I'm going to read a paragraph from the beginning of another story. So they'll be kind of like echo your poem style. So this is the very first paragraph of Virginia Is Not Your Home. I'll just say that I've been obsessed with people who want to change their name, that idea of wanting to be different and to like declare you're different. So that kind of starts with that idea. They hung that name on you at birth, but Virginia was never your home. Read Nausea by Sartre and give yourself a new one. Trumpet your new name to the liver-spotted washroom mirror like a coronation. Gape your mouth and angle your tongue behind your teeth. While you're at it, work to remedy those other afflictions, that fetid high hill R that has planted itself in the middle of words like wash. Scrub the stink of manure from your clothing, and while your young body churns over the basin, keep whispering your new, still secret name. Believe that if you can just change this, you can change everything. So that's the opening to one story. And one thing I was thinking about with this idea of inheritance is there's this personal idea of inheritance, and then there's kind of like societal idea of inheritance. And I think in this collection, I kind of jump back and forth between both of those things. And in one story I have, Buying a House Ahead of the Apocalypse, I'm thinking about that idea of a future in terms of, all the things we worry about, and how do you invest in the future when things feel like they're falling apart around you? And that's one way to think about it. But I'm going to read just the very first paragraph of the novella, which takes up kind of the pretty biggest chunk of the book, called My Monticello, for which the book's named. And in this book, I'm really thinking about Charlottesville 2017, when we were the host to the Unite the Right rally. Unfortunately, you've probably seen the images, kind of the precursor to the storming of the Capitol, with the tiki torches and the Nazi flag. So this novella was me really wrestling with, how do you manage that? And I was like, how do you respond to that? What do you do? How do you maintain? Just how do you respond to that? And I ended up responding by writing this novella, The Introvert's Revenge. We claimed it first, this little mountain, me and Ma Violet and a scattering of neighbors, all of us fleeing First Street after men came to set our row of tin-roofed homes on fire. The men came at dusk, blaring an operatic, "Oh, say, can you see?" My singing too. White heads rose up from dusty jeeps, and dark hair thrashed, and a harsh new wind like tattered flags. "Ours," the men shouted. Their rifles gleamed as if they'd only just been bought, a megastore militia. Through a hasty breach in Ma Violet's blind, I even saw a boy among them, blond and sneering in a pickup window. Men leapt from back seats, sprang out of truck beds, and rushed towards the faces of our homes. White hands clutched metal canisters, swung torches, spilling flames. Bright shouts, the rising haze of smoke, all that and more rousted us out. From our patchy front yards, we saw bodies blur as some of our neighbors charged forward to try to stop them. We saw a teen struck with the butt of a rifle, his temple spraying red. A toddler flailed, diapered and clinging to its mother's hips as she sank, knees first, to the sidewalk. What we saw in those moments riveted us, and then it set us free.
Ooh. Love it. Thank goodness.
That was incredible. I really love that you've taken, well, it is such beautiful revenge. And I think it goes to show you that the pen is so much mightier than the sword, even though sometimes it's hard to believe that. But like here, it's so wonderful how you've taken something from your life, like an incident and you've responded to it and created this beautiful piece of art.
Yeah.
It's really incredible. I mean, I when I met Jocelyn down in Virginia, she is really quiet and very introverted, but she's really, really sweet too. And when I read her work, it was like, pow! Like I was not expecting it. I guess because she's so quiet, but then it made so much sense. It's so wonderful.
It's always the quiet ones. Watch out for the quiet ones.
Yes, you have to love that, right?
Yeah.
So when did you start working on that particular story? Did you walk, like, did that incident happen, like that event, and then did you just stew on it and then take notes, and then, because My Monticello, it's like it's a broader, you made it this beautiful sculpture. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I was a public school art teacher for 20 years up until selling this book. That was my 20th year, and the book and the pandemic together conspired to me to say, it's a nice time to do something else. I taught visual art, which I loved, and that persona difference. By persona, or myself, it's not even a persona. Myself, my express self as a public school teacher is different than my internal self as a writer. And with that story, we experienced Unite the Right, which was, for me, was very impactful and very trying, in combination with a lot of other things that were happening at that moment. About a year later, I had been thinking about it. I wrote an essay about it. I wrote 2 essays about it. And I went to an event where a Black descendant of Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings was introduced. It was, on the 1-year anniversary, and seeing her. And then I say this, but it's really true. I saw her pumping gas like the next week. It's like, when you learn a word and then you hear it everywhere, you see a person, like, have they been following me? So I saw this woman and I thought, oh, the past is the future, as the past is the future. And Monticello, for some reason, to me, along with, those, the people who came here, they rallied around Thomas Jefferson's statue the night before the big event, with torches. They went to UVA. There was a UVA student among them, a graduate who had come back. So there was a very intentional claiming of Thomas Jefferson. And so that along with this Black descendant of Thomas Jefferson got me thinking about inheritance, about heritage, about who belongs, about how I felt visiting Monticello, about just about a lot of things, about my own insecurity, about home, the idea of home in Virginia, the idea of home in America, had the fraughtness around it. And that's how I ended up writing.
It's so interesting that word inheritance has such positive and negative connotations. Like there's the positiveness of like, oh, the money, if like who gets that? And then, but then there's also the trauma that, it's a very interesting, heavy word.
Well, it can be interpreted in so many ways. Like our children will inherit global warming. They'll inherit many things, right? But just recently, I was thinking about the salon, and I had always been told that my great-grandfather was a publisher in China, and he wrote anti-government stuff, and so they burned down his publishing home and his home, and so he became impoverished instantly. You hear stories, whatever, right? But then my father, I was helping him to clear out his stuff, and I found a 6-volume dictionary that my great-grandfather had actually written and printed, and it really hit home. And I was like, oh wait, maybe that's why I'm a writer. Like it just never, never made sense to me before. But you don't realize that you get handed down these things, and then it's just in you.
Yeah. And in Jared's poem, there's that turn where you are both the person inheriting and the one who's passing down. And sometimes the things that you pass on are so unintentional as parents, right?
Yeah.
Well, actually, Jared, you said something before. You said try to be the better version than yourself, and I think that too is something that is very appropriate to talk about here, because we really do. We hand down, like, we get patterns, whatever, handed down to us. We get history handed down to us, and really, it's so much a choice whether or not we change things that are, change patterns that are not constructive, right? And like, this is terrible, but I have not ever thought to write anything to my children, but I will now that you've mentioned it, because really, what am I writing for? Right? But can you talk a little bit about what you meant by that, and does that apply to your work?
Yeah, I think so. And it's something that sort of took me by surprise when I became a parent. This, suddenly all these things I were saying, were being listened to by someone who, I was a major voice in that person becoming a person. And in a poem I wrote, I say this crap and it becomes her childhood. And I was like, oh, like I'm saying something and I'm just like sort of saying it. And I'm like, oh, this is formative. And that becomes a lot of responsibility, another thing that sort of occurred to me was, my daughter asked me, like, when I became an adult. And I think I became an adult when I became a parent, like, for me, that was the transition.
Doesn't it sort of hang on that Remica line of when you let things in, they haunt or anchor you, right? Like that, like, and children like are inherently in us.
Yeah. And I mean, like, Jared, that idea of, like, I became first of all, I became like a patient person when I had I believe firmly children are only here to teach us patience. Like, that's it. I'm so serious. Like, I don't know how we would get it. But also my grace, Jared, when you said, like, the grace that I now give my parents, who I realized were just imperfect human beings, or my grandmothers. Like, when I got married and inherited kids, so it was like Adwater instant family. My kids were 4, 12, and 16. My brother-in-law came too. And man, I'm telling you, like, you're sitting there like, oh, nobody gives you any instruction. Like, there is nothing. No one hands you anything. And then I'm just supposed to, like, let them go in the world and hope they come back okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So really, like, there's real grace that you're given, when you step into the role of a parent. And that's kind of when you become who you really are.
That's so interesting. Victory Joe from the audience said, I had never wondered where I got my writing from until I saw a poem that my dad wrote for my mom for her birthday. He showed me his drafts, and there was suddenly a deeper connection with him than I had.
Wow.
Sweet. Yeah.
So dad, but also writing draft upon draft. I mean, he was loving on that woman. That was
yeah.
Okay. Right. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Oh, here's a semi question, not quite a question, but I'm thinking about artistic synergy, inheritance, and place. What do you have to say about synergy, inheritance, and place? Let's ask Jocelyn. She's being quiet, and because she's talking about places.
Well, I'm not sure about synergy, but when I think about place, I think place for me is huge. And this collection, as I said before, I was thinking about Virginia, and I didn't actually come up with that idea first. I just kept writing. And since I've lived in Northern Virginia, I've lived in Charlottesville and the Valley, it just was natural. But then I recognized this idea of place almost as a character and as, again, something inherited. There's something about, I say this sometimes, there's something about how place should be almost neutral. Like I feel like I'm a Virginian. I was born here. I grew up here, but it's not neutral. You know, it's just, I should unequivocally feel like this is home, and yet it's not. Hence the story, Virginia is not my home. And this idea of, is it or isn't it, or how is it, or who gets to say, you know, someone else.
Yeah. I think that is so interesting, because I think about this a lot, because, whenever the internment camp issues come up, the whole idea of home, and the idea that like it could be taken from you and just lost, like gone. It really does raise that question. Really, what is home? What is this idea? You can feel attached to a place or a thing, but is it real? Like if it can be taken away, right? You feel like your roots are go deep, but do they? Like, what does that mean? And can it be taken from you? And I found My Monticello so interesting that way. It really made me really think. And I think the whole idea of inheritance is so interesting, because we inherit things, or an idea of place, but it's so not necessarily real in a way. Is it?
Well, it's complicated, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's I think about the question of where we're from, where we're coming from when we come to the page, and how where we're from is absolutely a question of geography, but not strictly a question of geography. It's also like a collection of our experiences, our family, our friends, our traumas, our triumphs. It's like all those, it's like what things your grandfather said and things your grandmother never said, and it comes from silence and language. And so where we're from suddenly is all those things we bring to the page, which I guess becomes that, often talked about word voice, that we're always trying to find. So it's definitely a place, but it's also more than that.
Yeah.
Remica?
I see.
Go ahead. You can read it.
No, I can do both, because it was a two-part question from Sarah, but I was thinking about what Jared just said. My memoir, Soul Culture, it starts with this essay called Imagining Home, because it's really like, all the things that you thought about a place when you were little. I kind of grew up in Augusta, and I thought, man, this is a great, wonderful place with no racism and no problems. When I became an adult, I was like, girl, what are you fantasizing about? It was like hilarious. But I think it really does, piggyback on what Jared was saying, and kind of Sarah's question. She was asking that question about synergy, inheritance, and place. She's read the book. She's sharp, because there's in Room Swept Home, it starts with this essay where I'm at NAMAC. I'm at the National Museum of African American History and Culture that opens in the Smithsonian. And I'm looking at what I think is like one of the most amazing museum exhibits that touches back on what Jocelyn is saying. It's called The Paradox of Liberty, and it's all Jefferson's descendants, like all these bricks leading up to a statue of Jefferson, which, is just a kind of genius way to make us enter, this kind of question of, what is home? Like what is place? Like what is place and inheritance in this country at this time, with all the things we now have to reckon with? And so I think for me, I'm always trying to write through the nuances of all those questions, which means we'll always have plenty to write, because it's not something that we're going to be able to like pinpoint and solve. But I think like Jocelyn was saying, the work ends up being, it's kind of a makeshift map in many ways, not only of place, but of us.
I love what you said, like, what do you do with it? Like, if you're given an inheritance, what do you do with it? Like, it sort of defines your character, right? When you're given, so especially if it's something horrific, that like those demonstrations, that, that's probably been given down to them. They didn't just make it up. And so it's just interesting, like what do you make of what is given to you, and can you transform it into something good if it was something horrible? So interesting.
And I think
can you change it?
Yeah, this changes the subject. So if you wanted to finish that thought, go ahead, Jared.
Oh no, I was just saying, and I think like it's true. Like as an American, you inherit American history and past. Like my parents immigrated here. You know, I was born here, but my parents immigrated here. So, but like you still inherit.
You still get the stuff that comes from the plate.
You know?
Yeah. You get
Like,
their stuff, you get the America stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So interesting. Yeah. So Helene asks, do your children write? I did not inherit the writing gene. My parents had other skills, but my son is a brilliant writer. Her son is a writer. Her parents were not. So she's interested to know whether your children have the gift that you have.
It was pretty funny. My daughter actually came up to me about a month ago, and she was like, you know, Dad, I'm sorry, I don't think I'm a poet. I think I'm more of a novelist. And I said, you got nothing to worry about.
How old is this? How old is she?
11.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
11. Wow. Well, tell her she'll make the money, and you'll just...
No, don't
right.
tell that.
Well, not that. Sorry, Jocelyn. You're right. I'm sorry.
I'm just saying.
Right? That's true. Listen, my kids tell me unequivocally, like, listen, that reading, that writing stuff, that's yours. Keep it over there.
Nice.
They have told me in no uncertain terms, like, don't be pushing stuff on me. I just tried to give them some books from my office. My daughter did at least, take the book. But they are not, no, they think about writing as a completely separate endeavor that is just like mine, but they're very supportive of it.
That's nice.
Yeah, my teenager is not a writer yet exactly, but I'm curious. Like, I feel like he sets himself apart from us. He thinks we're super bohemian, like he thinks we're just weird hippie bohemian people, and he just he's like, no, I don't want to be like you, but secretly I think he wants to be like us. I'm hoping. There's music, there's art. I feel like there's some way, and it's going to be his own form, that he pulls from this idea of putting yourself into the world. I'm hoping that comes through, because both my partner and I, that's a big thing that we hoped for, and that we think makes life, just so much richer. It's like such a rich thing to have at your disposal, because it's not you changing the world. It's like what it does in you, the experience of trying and trying and trying. So,
well, writing is so much about communicating too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you hope that they're good writers, or just, at least that they can communicate what they have to say to the world in a
to the world and to themselves, right?
Right.
Because it doesn't give you answers. It just, I write to question, and it helps me articulate those questions a little bit better every time.
Exactly. Okay, D'Angelo Dia wants to, or maybe it's Dia D'Angelo in our.
Nope,
I don't know.
it's not. But
D'Angelo
hey,
Dia. Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, people know. Okay. Hey, person. That's awesome. So that's a good question. Where or how are you centering your joy as a writer as you engage these sensitive topics of discomfort?
Oh gosh.
See, good questions in that audience. Thanks, audience.
Silence.
I mean, no, I was just considering it. I mean, for me, very particularly, like with this new project, it's the first project that I have that's kind of like really hybrid in as many ways as I could imagine. There's essays, there's a family tree in there. There's like pictures of me when I'm a kid. There's pictures of parades in Norfolk in the 50s. There's historical images and all kinds of stuff. And I knew the book was going to have to start with sorrow. So I wanted to center it in beauty for myself. And so that was the way that I made sure. And also the whole last section kind of just moves through our joy, what joy there is to be had, despite all the difficulties.
Good. Nice. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm thinking about that. I think when I think about writing the novella, I had to go into a kind of a very dark space to imagine this kind of futuristic apocalyptic light situation where the white supremacists are like zombies, and these characters are fleeing, to Monticello, and they're taking refuge there. But I guess there's two things. One is I kind of hid a little secret utopia in my dystopia in the story for myself, which is that my character, Denasia Love, who's a descendant of Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings, and a teacher, and all the things that I, within her, I let her contain some of the things that I want, like generosity, kindness. And then, these group of neighbors kind of create they choose to be together. They choose to work together under these very, very difficult situations. And it's a very fleeting, and there's not a suggestion that everything's going to be okay in the end, but just that moment of choice and intention is a utopia. And I think that's life, I think, sometimes too, right? There are a lot of very difficult things going on, and how do we still choose to laugh and be joyful and be kind and be connected with one another, even if not to fix it, but just because, like, you know, if we can. I don't know.
Yeah.
Hard though.
I kind of agree with what everybody said. Yeah, kind of like a Polaroid, you know, the dark and the light, they give relief to each other. You know, that idea of, you know, I was saying the book that I wrote, it's kind of all about living for joy, but also fearing the worst. And, you know, like, how do you negotiate those things? The world became an infinitely scarier place when I became a parent. And I was like, oh no, this is something I did not expect. But it did. It became a much scarier place. And how do but it also became a brighter place and a stranger, more unusual place in these wonderful ways. And one of the things that I love as a writer is that I get to see the world kind of anew through their eyes. Like, they see things for the first time. And I think as a writer, if you can kind of channel that, you're really getting a great way to sort of see things anew, which I think as writers we're always trying to do, you know, make the familiar strange again. And I think there's a lot of joy in that. And with that, it's the fear of that being taken away. And I think that kind of just upped the stakes for me as a writer and as a human. But I also think you can write about something that is sad or dark. But if you were able to articulate it in a way that you like were really hoping you could, if you like nail it, then I think there's a lot of joy in that. Like, I've been really happy when I've written a sad poem that I thought worked. You know?
Yeah.
A good point.
You know?
Yeah. And it also it helps to contain that darkness when you can write it in a sentence or a paragraph, and you can put it on the page and be like, okay, and now I'm going to move away from that.
Yeah.
To the next thing.
Absolutely.
Like, it's kind of nice.
I always joke that this book was so stressful, and I'm like, and you know, you close the last page and people are like, oh my God, what happened? And I'm like, now you can work. Like, these are my fears in the middle of the night, and I've handed them to you.
That's right.
Yeah.
You
Like,
keep
there's a cathartic nature to that, and like a joy to it too. Like, okay, well, yes, but also, you know.
But also, like, you verbalize something that other people are feeling as well, and when they read it, there is this connection, right? And this feeling that you're not crazy or you're not alone. You know, there are other people, and it could be sad or terrifying or whatever, but if it resonates with the reader, that's incredible. That's amazing, right? Like, can't get better than that.
True. Yeah. And I wonder if the person who asked that question meant, like, in the process of writing, does it ever overwhelm you? And if it does, how do you sort of, especially, and we've had this question before, actually, in a different sense of the transition between the writing space and the parenting space, because sometimes they bump up against each other, where you don't expect to have to transition into the parenting quite as abruptly as you sometimes have to, particularly when they're small. And going from, like, something that's really intense and maybe dark, and like having to move into, like, look at this thing that I made, you know, like, is there a process by which you're able to release that?
I think there's lots of little processes that help. You know, for me, when I'm writing books that are like steeped in historical research and I'm dealing with really difficult things, often I'm reading the very opposite. I tell people all the time, Black women romance writers saved me during the pandemic, right? Because I was like, man, this world sucks, but something's gonna be happy. And so, I mean, really and truly, I often have to balance whatever I'm writing. If I'm, you know, writing really heavy poems, I'm often reading like fiction. It doesn't have to be lighthearted, but when I change the genre, that helps me cultivate joy too, shakes it up in my brain a little bit.
Yeah.
Or I'll go back to plays and listen to like really good dialogue. Joe Turner's come and gone. I've gone back to August Wilson, I don't know how many times, right, to just get some light, right? So, you know, there's some of that. There's also, you know, listening to Beyonce real loud on repeat in your car.
Yes. Oh, yes.
I mean,
music is cleansing. That's
it's
for
really
sure.
rude of her to make us fall in love with country music this week. But, you know, so, you know, but I mean, those small things. So, like, what are some of your things, guys, that you do to like take your brain away from?
For me, you know, the Knicks. I've been a long-suffering Knicks fan, and we're finally good again, and so I take a lot of joy in that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll find, you know, the basketball podcast, or kind of see the team coming together. Jalen Brunson is, you know, for those of you who are following, is having himself a season. So for me, that's a nice way to balance. But I also we'll read in other genres and kind of find that as a release valve.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah.
Jocelyn, do you have?
Just what do I do to keep the joy? I'm like I think I can do both. There's something wrong with me.
You're very stable and healthy.
Right.
No, I don't think that's it. Christine, she's like, oh, you're a nice, like, people are like, oh, you're a very nice person and very contained. And I'm like, my mind isn't, like, my partner's like, you're wrong. You say you're hilarious. Like, no one knows. Like, so I just think that's just something about in the composition of me, is that I accept that contradictory things can be side by side, and that light and dark can be side by side. And I can kind of vacillate weirdly between the two things really quickly. So, and maybe just a little ritual of space to move from one thing to another.
I have a question for Remica from Sarah on inheritance. In your collection about family lineage, you take so much time to share your artistic lineage too. Allusions, the note section. I was wondering, where in your writing process did that become so important, and why?
Oh, that's a.
I know, she asked really good questions. Thank you for being out there, Sarah.
An annotator, like, thinking about all kinds of things. Notes are really important to me as a poet. I'm also, let me tell you, I'm real nosy. Okay, I want to know everybody's business all the time. So when I start a book, I start at the acknowledgement section. I go back to the notes often. The index was the most exciting part of my memoir. Like, I like to see how things are put together. So the notes section for me is really just another way for me to help people see how much layering happens when you're putting together a piece of writing. Often the spark is another person's poem or a line of dialogue from somewhere, and then you're linking what's happening in history, and then there might be some other personal thing that you have to see. So the notes help me kind of craft that inheritance and show you that there's all these little moving pieces that come together. Are you guys big like notes? And I also have a bibliography in this book. I mean, it's real for me. I love it.
I'd say, another thing with inheritance is that you inherit kind of what you read as well.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, reading and writing are kind of simultaneous activities. Like, if you were to watch me write, which I don't recommend, it's very boring, but it'd be me with, like, you know, a stack of books, reading mostly. And then I'm sort of in conversation. And then something else, like Remica says, it'll spark something, or I'll be like, oh, I have something to add to that, or say to that, or something to kind of push against there. And a number of the poems in my collection, you know, I have after another writer, because I you know, that it feels like a conversation to me, and I think that's another kind of inheritance. You know,
I love that. I feel like poets are particularly good at that. Or there's a tradition of that is mysterious to me a little bit, but I really admire. I think that I joked about the introvert's revenge, but I do think I'm constantly reacting to the world. Like, I'm collecting slights and little moments of beauty and really weird things that don't belong in my mind as I'm walking around the day. And it's almost like by writing them, I'm making them real in the world, or like, and I realized my mom, speaking of inheritances, she's not a writer, but she is super nosy and looking out the window, like through the blinds, like they can't see her. She's making up stories about everyone. Like, if someone limped, she's like, I bet they got out of the bed the wrong way. Like, she has like a story she's making about why things are the way they are. So I really think I inherited
Oh,
her
the filling in the details of like what you see.
very fantastic.
Nice.
Like you don't know if they got like very specifically. It's really neat. So, noticing that, I think that's where I got that from.
That's fun.
I actually do that sometimes too. If I see someone who does something really nasty or whatever, I'm like, wonder what made that person like that. And I'm like, then I imagine this whatever story to make it understandable in my mind, you know?
Are there any writers or actors who don't at some point sit and watch people and just fill in their stories?
Not in my class. I make them. Yeah, I know.
Like maybe with phones people don't do that anymore.
I make them do, eavesdropping exercises because dialogue. I mean, come on. Yes, listen. The writers are the biggest gossips, but in a good way. So because we're collectors. You know what Jocelyn was saying. Like we're creating collages of things constantly. So that's what the work is. You're collecting little bits and pieces of things to make a whole.
Yeah, and with my students too, one of the biggest things I try to teach them and try to remind myself is to pay attention. And I think it's harder than it's ever been probably in history to pay attention because we always have something else to pay attention to.
There's too much information.
Yeah, and we always have a phone
for
there.
attention.
And that I think, the writer Carrie Fountain said that writing is the act of not giving away your attention, but keeping that attention with you where you are.
Oh,
and I love how her definition of writing has nothing to do with putting words on a page. It's just being awake, and that if you trust in that, the writing will come. Yeah. And I think really that's the biggest hurdle for most young writers is they're growing up in a world in which the second they get on a line for the post office, they're not paying attention. They're just going on their phone. Yeah. So it's really hard to pay attention, I think, for them.
Carrie's one of the best writers to compartmentalize the parental experience that I know. Yes. So if you want to read about people who are writing really wonderfully about parenting and children, read Carrie Fountain.
There it is. There's the recommendation. We'll put it up on the bookshelf with the rest of you guys' books. Absolutely. You guys, this is ridiculously the end of the session. I mean, the hour went by in like a heartbeat. You were amazing. Thanks to the audience for sticking with us and like asking these great questions. It's always fun when like everybody is engaged because it's like, back and forth. And then I feel bad for the playback people, but we still love you, playback people. We're glad that you came. So the next time that you get to do this, and all of you are welcome to come back and be in the audience and ask questions, is on March 12th. We're going to have, the theme is searching for meaning. And we're going to have Therese Svoboda, who is amazing. She writes copiously. She has 2 books out right now simultaneously. And then Kate Schmier and Amanda Galvin Quinn, which should be astonishing. It should be really great. We are always here on the second Tuesday of the month taping these shows live. And then during the live show, it's fun because you get to interact with the people. And then on the playback, you can watch playback anytime by subscribing. Now I'm going to be like a YouTuber. Like, please subscribe to YouTube/Parentis and like and all the things. Additionally, Parentis is a 501c3 nonprofit. We welcome your donations on our homepage. There's a donate button. You can click it. You can also tell all of your friends who are writers that have kids that we exist. Everything that we do is online. We have these salons in which we present fabulous writers who have kids. They are well beyond your average mommy blogger. We want to show you that it can be done. We don't tell you how to do it, but they can. And but there are many, many ways. We just want you to keep writing and succeed. Parentis' mission is to keep writers on creative track after they have kids. So if you like this, please enter our fellowship. It opens March 1st. It closes April 17th. It is for any writer that has a child under 10 years old, and the prize is phenomenal. It's like $2,000, publication in print and online. It is a year of mentorship, participation in our cycle of support, but you can always join our cycle of support by clicking the little join button on our homepage, and that is like a PBS membership, starts at $10 a month, goes as high as you want. And you can just come every week and meet with other writers that have kids online and just get your work done, man, because that's what it's all about.
We're here for you.
Yeah, I want to really thank our authors tonight. You guys were all amazing. It was like hanging out with you in your bookshelf-filled rooms. And Christine, of course, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
I feel like we should sing. Should we sing? Let's
No,
sing.
no.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Well, we've all
Thank
sung
everyone.
already, right? Have a great night, everyone. We'll see you next, what is it? The next second Tuesday.